Whenever you're ready.
Okay, we're ready.
We finally got settled.
Really?
Some of us.
We know Shannon's not going to be here, so we're all here. Thank you for being here.
I am very glad to be here. Let me just make sure I know what I'm doing. I don't want this to catch me.
You're still trying to eat that anchovy?
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
I am delighted to be here again to give you an update on our strategic planning process. We're making great progress and are ready to head into our next stage of community input. So I will share with you a little bit about the overall process, just as a reminder. So we are wrapping up our analysis phase, where we have looked at some of the issues in the environment. We've looked at some of the organizational performance historically. We've analyzed that information. We had a wonderful session with about 80 very diverse and representative stakeholders from the community last week. And during that session, which we call a design session, they gave great input on the priority student outcomes and strategic themes that they would like the strategic plan to focus upon. We are going to continue to think about the district vision and mission, but really as a question of whether or not the work of the strategic plan aligns with that. So before we move into the strategy development effort around designing strategic initiatives and actually thinking about the work to be done, we're going to go out and test the ideas around the priority student outcomes and strategic themes with the community. When we finish that, we will then work on the strategic initiatives, and then we'll move into the last phase, which is the action planning. So just again, as a reminder of the language that we'll be using, I won't reference the vision and mission descriptions. You already have a vision and mission. You will see that as we take our drafts out to the community, we do include the district mission in the documents, which both invites people to provide feedback on that, but also to provide focus for the strategic plan. The priority student outcomes are specific measurable results to achieve that are focused on the needs of greatest improvement and opportunity for student results in order to achieve the district's mission. Those will be the things which the strategic plan will work toward. The strategic themes are the areas that must be addressed within the district work, the areas where the district needs to think differently about its practices and its efforts and how it does work in order to achieve the priority student outcomes. Within each strategic theme, then, we will develop objectives, which will define specifically the areas that we want to focus on within the district. And then in our last phase, we'll work on the strategic initiatives and the action plans. So what we're in essence about today is the analysis, which is making sure that we have adequately defined the problem, if you will, or as the slide says, simplifying the often overwhelming complexity of reality by identifying certain aspects of the situation as being the critical ones. So since the strategic plan, if it's to be effective, can't work on anything and everything, we have to select those areas that are the most critical. And that's what we engaged the community with last week and what we'll be sharing with you today. The guiding policy will then become the overall approach or the strategic initiatives that will be developed in order to address these requirements. And then the last thing that we'll do is to develop very detailed action plans, budgets, stakeholder engagement efforts, and so forth for implementation. So you can see by the gray triangle at the bottom that we're just entering phase 2. We're sharing our draft priority student outcomes and strategic themes with you this evening. Beginning actually at 9:30 tomorrow morning, we're going to start soliciting stakeholder input during a meeting with students. And after about 2 weeks of gathering stakeholder input, we will collect all of that information. We will have everything recorded. We will code every comment we receive. We will categorize those, and then we will bring back to the board any recommendations for revisions. Following that, we will then start working with strategy teams to develop the strategic initiatives. So I would like to run through a brief overview of our analysis findings, and we have narrowed this to really focus on the areas that emerged as the priorities, which you will see in the student priority outcomes. So one thing that we believe it's important to just have a feel for as we look at this data is how Lawrence compares to the state overall. And so you can see on this slide that you have about the same proportion of white students, but you have fewer Hispanic students and more students that the state codes as other. The majority group within that other category, which is a little over 10%, are multiracial students. The next largest category is Asian students, then American Indian students, which make up about 3% of your overall population, and then you have a very small group of Pacific Islander students. Additionally, while the state has almost 50% of students across the state that are low socioeconomic status as defined by being receiving free and reduced lunch, you have a little more than a third of your students in that category. You have fewer English learners and about the same percentage of students with disabilities. So we just provide that as information as we look at the district's performance against the state performance. We looked at your state assessment results over the last 3 years, and this is the percentage of students scoring at level 3 or 4, which you can see from the key on the bottom, means that they are demonstrating that they're on track to be college career ready or performing above expectations, and this threshold of scoring at 3 or 4 is what the state reports as essentially being the desired levels of performance. You've essentially been flat in both math and English language arts over the last 3 years, and your math scores are about 10% to 5% below your English language arts scores. The science test has only been utilized for 2 years. When we look at how you compare to other districts in the state overall, we see that you're about in the middle of the pack in math in terms of the percentage of students scoring at level 3 or 4. When we look at how you compare by student groups, which enables us to control for, if you will, these differences in the proportion of your population versus the proportion of the state, we find that when looking at individual student groups, Lawrence, which is the solid bar, performs at a higher rate than the state for every subgroup of students except for students with disabilities, where you're just a little bit below the state, and American Indian students. Also note that for your English learners, which are the gray bars, you are substantially above the state in terms of the percentage of students in levels 3 or 4. We also wanted to be attentive to the percentage of students scoring at level 1. So these students are below proficient. They don't even meet the basic grade level expectations. And so what we find is that when we get to 8th grade, almost 50% of all of your students are scoring at level 1. And one of the reasons that's critical is because 8th grade math performance is a predictor of high school dropout. Because generally students, when they reach 9th grade, if they fail a course, they're much more likely to then drop out. And so if they're not prepared for math and they fail math, then they're more likely to drop out. So this is an important indicator to be attentive to. And we see that 8th grade math does vary considerably by subgroups. This is now the percentage scoring in level 3 or 4. And so in math, in 8th grade, as we already noted, you have low performance overall, but you can see that some of your students, such as your low-income students and your American Indian students and your students with disabilities and African American students, are performing at very low levels. We looked at the math results, and we disaggregated by both race and income. And what this does, it allows us to separate out the effect of income from the effect of race on performance. So we will note that for every subgroup of students, there is a fairly significant gap between the solid bars, or the blue bars, excuse me, which are the non-free and reduced lunch students, and the red bars, which are the students who are on free and reduced lunch. However, there's not such a gap that when we look at, for example, our white students who are on free and reduced lunch, we see that almost 50% of them are achieving at the level 3 or 4 result. But when we look at our African American students that are not on free and reduced lunch, So we're looking at the blue bar of the African American students. Only 28% of those students are scoring at level 3 or 4. So what that means is that when controlling for poverty and taking out students who are low socioeconomic status as defined by free and reduced lunch, which last time I checked was about $48,000 a year in household income for a family of 4. So students who are above that level of income, white students, half of them are scoring at level 3 or 4. African American students, only 28% of them are scoring at level 3 or 4. So you have the influence of race here in your math data that is not explained by differences in poverty. So we know that the state assessment is not the only measure of whether or not students are learning. So we also took a look at the measures of academic progress scores that the district gives. And we compared the median MAP score for Lawrence with the national norm in math by grade level. And what you can see is that the blue bars and the red bars are about equivalent. The red bars are a little bit lower, so you're slightly above the national norm, but given the margin of error on this assessment, you're really on par with the nation. So now we're going to switch gears and look at English language arts assessments. And once again, we see that when we compare Lawrence to the state and other districts, you're well above the state on English language arts, and you're about in the middle of districts that you generally would consider comparable. We have the similar pattern in terms of how you perform among student groups compared to the state, in that you're performing above the state on all students groups with the exception of American Indian and students with disabilities, and you're well above the state with your English language learners. While there are fewer students at level 1 in English language arts than there are in math, you will note that there's about a third of your students in 3rd grade that are performing at level 1. This drops in 4th grade, but then it makes a steady rise back up until 7th grade. And when we look at 3rd grade literacy by subgroups, we note that there are significant differences among students in how they're performing on 3rd grade English language arts, with about 25% of your low socioeconomic students and about the same percentage of your Hispanic and your American Indian students performing at level 3 or 4 on this 3rd grade literacy test. So one thing that's interesting to note on the English language arts assessment is how much larger those gaps are between the blue bars and the red bars than they are in math. So if you recall, when we compared the math by subgroup with the with the income differentiated, those numbers were about 10 to 12 points. Here we're seeing gaps of 20 and 30 points. And so what this says is that for your students, poverty is much more of a differentiator in English language arts than it is in math. And so because of that, we don't see the same phenomenon of the lower income white students performing higher than the non-free and reduced lunch African American or Hispanic students, but that's largely because the gaps by income are so large across the board. We see the same pattern with the MAP scores in reading that we did in math, where you're a little bit above or on par with the nation. So now we're going to switch gears from the 3rd through 8th grade assessments to looking at the graduation rate. So your graduation rate has essentially been flat over the last 3 years when looking at the 4-year cohort graduation rate. And just to clarify, we got this data from this Kansas State report card. The 4-year cohort graduation rate is a nationally normed measure that is calculated by looking at students who enter in 9th grade who do not leave for a documented reason, such as transferring to another school, and who complete with a diploma within 4 years. So in 2018, 82.4% of the students who entered 9th grade 4 years earlier and did not transfer to another school graduated. When we compare Lawrence to the nation, to Kansas, and to other comparable school districts, we see that you're more toward the lower end of the scale than the middle of the scale on the 4-year cohort graduation rate. We selected other districts across the country that have similar demographics or of similar size to Lawrence and are also the home of a major higher education institution. So because we're using this 4-year cohort graduation rate, we can be confident that it is calculated the same way across the country. So we can also look at your graduation rate by subgroups of students. The state has not yet released the 4-year graduation cohort rate for 2018. But when we look at 16 and 17, what we see is that the line on the bottom are your low socioeconomic students, and they are graduating at far lower rates than other students. There's a pretty significant increase between 16 and 17 for your American Indian students. However, since that's just 2 years, and also because that is a fairly small population, there's about 25 to 30 12th graders in that population each year, so just a few students can make a big difference in the percentage. Your ACT scores, while they've declined slightly, are still well above the Kansas and United States average. And so what that tells us is that while the percentage of your 9th graders who are graduating in 4 years is lower than many other comparable districts in the state in Kansas, for those students who do remain and take the ACT, their performance is quite high. Your ACT scores, when compared with other districts and the state and the nation, are actually right about in the middle, whereas your graduation rate, if you remember, you were more towards the lower end. And then when we look at post-secondary success, what we see is that you've been a little bit above the state until 2016 when you dropped slightly below. This measure is always reported with a 2-year lag because it's reporting on the progress of students 2 years after they graduate. So 2016 is the year for which they had data for students 2 years later. So the indicators that are collected, and the bottom one cut out a little bit on the slide up there, but a student counts as a positive in this measure if they've earned an industry-recognized certification while in high school, or after high school earned a post-secondary certificate, post-secondary degree, such as an associate's, or they were enrolled in a post-secondary institution both the first and second year following high school graduation. So you're showing about 55% of your graduating class of 2016 met that mark. So I'm going to switch gears now. That was a focus on objective data about student performance, and now we're going to move to the perceptions of your constituents. This is the results of the 2017 Patron Insight phone and online survey. For the online survey, we're able to break out respondents by type. So we did show whether they were community members, staff members, or parent members. For the phone survey, there's basically a representative sample, and we're not sure what those types of respondents represent or who they represent. There are 5 areas where on a scale where 1 was an F and 5 was an A, an average of at least one respondent group gave the district a 4 or higher, so a B or better on average. And you can note also that the performance of district teachers was rated a 4 or better by everyone except for the general community members who were not either a parent or an employee. Conversely, this slide shows 3 areas where at least one respondent group gave the district a C or lower as the rating. And the last one, the district's record on making and fulfilling promises, every group except, well, actually every group gave it an average of a, the staff gave it an average of a 3, and the other groups were higher on that one. This survey by Ray & Associates was done as part of the superintendent's search process, and they essentially provided, this was an online survey, they provided a number of different items and asked respondents to rate them from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So this shows every single item that was on that survey, and what's plotted are the percentage of respondents who strongly agreed or agreed to the statement. And so the areas in the box are areas where less than half of the respondents agreed or strongly agreed with the statement. So these address needs of diverse racial and cultural and socioeconomic groups, personalized learning, recruiting, maintaining effective teachers, social emotional learning needs, district making informed decisions on research and data, budget funds spent responsibly, and the district communicates a transparent and compelling vision for the future. The superintendent held several listening sessions. We reviewed all of the comments that were recorded during those listening sessions. The green chart shows the items that came up that were mentioned by a majority in any of the ones where there is an X. The areas of improvement were mentioned by a majority in any of the ones in red where there is an X. So you can see that across all areas, teachers and support staff are viewed as a strength, and salaries of non-administrative staff were viewed as a weakness. The superintendent also asked about ideas to eliminate opportunity gaps. Most groups mentioned smaller class sizes and what the district needed to do to be the best in the country. One of the most frequent things were, again, non-administrative salaries and then also smaller class sizes. So we took all of that information, we shared it with 80 people last week, and we asked people to identify the priority student outcomes that must be improved to achieve the district mission, and to identify strategic themes, which would be broad categories to focus enhancement in district practices. We used an interactive process where individuals gave us their ideas. We collected those ideas. We grouped and categorized those ideas, and we met with the executive leadership team the next morning to present this information that we are now going to take out and test with the community. So we've identified 5 priority student outcomes, which are reflected in the data and critical to achieving your mission, which we've included on the slide. Increase literacy by 3rd grade, increase math proficiency by 8th grade, narrow achievement gaps between student groups, increase high school completion, and advance students' post-graduation success in college or career. I will note that the choice of language of college or career was intentional because it was very clear from the community input that a path that leads directly to a career needs to be considered as valued as a path that leads to college, and equal resources need to be provided for both paths. The 5 strategic themes, which I do want to point out, do not connect one-to-one to the priority student outcomes. So the theory here is if we do the right work in these 5 strategic themes, all of these priority student outcomes will improve. Number 1, effective and committed employees. And you can see the types of comments that were included, the ideas that would be addressed within that strategic theme. Strategic theme number 2, a guaranteed and cohesive curriculum. Strategic theme number 3, student-centered learning. So I will just, we're looking for a phrase that would capture the myriad of things that were discussed here, but these were things such as additional career pathways, more flexible learning opportunities, flexible schedules, opportunities for students to learn through experiential experiences rather than just classroom learning. So all of those types of things would fit in here. Strategic theme 4, social emotional support for students. And strategic theme number 5, data-informed decisions. So we hope you can see that between the objective student achievement data and also the feedback from your constituents, that we believe these incorporate the major priorities that have emerged. So the next step, following community input, would be to populate these strategic themes with the specific projects that will be needed to enhance, improve, redesign the district's practices in these areas. But we don't want to move forward with that until we're sure that these 5 strategic themes are right. And in order to know that, we need to hear back from stakeholders again. And so in this next round of stakeholder engagement, we will be asking 4 open-ended questions, and again, recording all comments, reading those, coding those, categorizing those. What works well about this strategic plan framework? Is there anything you disagree with? What is missing? And then for each of those 5 strategic themes, we will ask if participants have specific ideas for how to prepare students for the future in those areas. So if people have particular programs or projects or efforts that they're familiar with, or just general ideas about what should be done differently, there'll be an opportunity for them to mention that. So tomorrow there will be 2 conversations with students. Tomorrow afternoon there'll be a conversation for teachers and staff. Thursday morning there will be a meeting, and this is actually going to be inclusive of school and district administrators. And then there are 2 general community sessions scheduled where anyone that wants to participate can attend on February 28th and March 4th in the evening. And so I'll stop and see if the board has any questions at this point.
Any questions, comments? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious, since a lot of the data we looked at focused on marginalized populations, but none of the themes specifically spell out. I mean, I see the outcomes, narrowing the achievement gaps between student groups, but none of the strategic themes specifically include that language. So how have other districts, or, I mean, so when I say you've brought a budgetary issue to me and I need to know how it's going to, you know, have an impact on reducing the achievement gap or the access gap, and it's not spelled out specifically in the themes.
Right.
How would you frame that?
Yes, so that's an excellent question, and my response to this is actually based on a lot of experience dealing with this issue in school districts. And what we have found is necessary is that addressing issues around equity, inclusion, practices that meet the needs of all students, and really address this outcome of narrowing achievement gaps between student groups and define broadly, not just those that we report data on. We have to interweave those efforts into each one of the other strategic themes. So for example, there are things we can do about which teachers we choose to hire and which students they teach that can influence equity and inclusion. There are things we can do around what kind of curriculum choices we make, what kind of curriculum content we design. There are things we can do around giving students culturally relevant or individualized learning experiences and ensuring that all students have equal access to the kinds of things we provide. There are a lot of things we can do in social emotional support, and particularly some of our practices around behavior and discipline that can marginalize students or not. And similarly, as we think about data-informed decisions, we need to be looking at how decisions we make are going to affect all of our students. So to have it listed as a separate theme, what that would then lead to is having a box that said, well, here are the things we're going to do separate and apart to deal with cultural relevance and equity and inclusion, which we find, rather than giving it attention and focus, what it actually does is it sidelines it to a separate sort of add-on set of activities. So however we need to state that so that's more clearly understood, we can work on that language. But that is the intent, that each one of those priority student outcomes will be woven through those strategic themes, including that one about narrowing achievement gaps between student groups. And in our experience, that's the kind of systemic thinking and practice that's necessary in order to really make a difference.
So I guess what I would say to that, and I appreciate that response because it's quite helpful, but what I would say, so we have this board sitting here right now, and in a few months we'll have a different board sitting here, or well, in less than a year, there'll be a different makeup. So, and that will be the case every couple of years. So I think when we are, it's still sort of siloed in that it's in the priority student outcomes in a way, in terms of the achievement gaps between student groups, for example. And it's sort of the overarching theme of what needs to be addressed most critically. So what I would like to see, I understand your point about making sure that everything we look through is through an equity lens, but if it's not clearly said, this is stated very clearly, either maybe as a goal or as a summary statement in some way, I'm afraid it'll get lost if the language is not specific and clear to the next group of people that are sitting up here.
So one idea that we had, which we were trying not to complicate the slide, but let me just offer this, is to actually visually include something that's almost like a thread that goes through all 5, that references, and again, then we have to figure out what are the right words to use, but ensuring equitable practices that meet the needs of all students, and just visually showing that intention is that has to be woven across all 5.
I would personally appreciate that, to see the word, or to see a couple of words that speak to that, so that this doesn't become too broad and lose its focus with down the line as we utilize the strategic plan. But I have to say, just in terms of the overall presentation, it was excellent. I appreciate it. It was incredibly helpful to me. Thank you.
I think Dr. Lewis is going to say too, but that was my question was, and he was mentioning, like, making sure we purposefully place that in the strategic initiatives, what equity work we'll do in each theme, because it'll, then again, like you said, create that cohesive.
And we had that discussion in our ELT meeting relative to seeing that, in one of these themes. But one of the things that I've heard in the district is that, yes, we've been doing this equity work for close to 10 years, but I'm hearing from stakeholders and teachers, how do we get it down to the classroom level? And so by looking at some initiatives and even further, some action steps that will be some measurable action steps for adult behaviors that we are expected to see and measure and hold people accountable for in some action steps that's easy for people to understand, that when I go in this classroom or when I go in this building, this is what I'm able to see, as opposed to, yeah, we're going to address equity, but how are you going to do that by these measurable adult behaviors?
That's really helpful. I think just in terms of the summary point where where people will be referencing the strategic themes, that there as well, there should be, like what you had said, like some kind of weaving of, or that something that forces boards that follow us to look through all of our decisions through an equity lens, which we've been talking about doing as a collective group of people. So I would just like to see it on this summary page, because I assume that this is the page you're going to be using most frequently when you're talking to the community, and I just want everyone to understand.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about what that would look like.
Okay.
It might be something we add into, when we talk about, like, she started with that vision mission, right? And that's not really it's not explicitly stated in that, but maybe it could be explicitly stated in that. But no, I do think when we come back to that strategic initiatives phase and we're looking, there's a lot of things in there that are not clear, but hopefully they will become more clear as tasks are outlined. Yeah. Any other comments? No?
Okay, well, we'll be off for input, and we will be back with you on, actually, I've got a slide in here just to point out that at your March 25th board meeting, we will have analyzed all of the input we've received and come back and be able to summarize that for you and tell you whether or not there's any changes that would be recommended based on that. So thank you all very much.
I'm sorry, like, I know you said you're going to, like, as we go and reach out, and I'm sure I plan to be at the community, that you'll get that, are you going to just group in the general ideas, or I'm concerned with sometimes even those things that may be like 5 people may make a comment relative to that's slightly different to one of the questions, and we just group, like, how are we going to know those outliers?
Sure. So we will read every comment, and we will code every comment, and then we do group them, so to speak. But everything will be given attention, so it's not necessarily the majority wins, so to speak. We will consider the relevance of every statement. Additionally, a lot of this is counterintuitive to me, the way this is clicking. The strategic initiatives, we will ask, what ideas do you have within each strategic initiatives for how the district could better improve student performance in the future? Those inputs will go to the teams that are working on those strategic initiatives. So they won't just be considered at this level. That'll actually be turned over to the teams that are working to develop the initiative so that they can consider all of those ideas as well.
I do think that's an interesting point, though, because we were involved in the meeting that you had with the 80 people, and we did hear, I thought, a really nice point of when you're kind of looking at the data a few slides back that has, all the different categories and the X's. There was sort of some giggling at like, oh, students want you to make learning fun or whatever. And somebody, I think, very acutely pointed out, why is that funny? Why is that something that we're sort of making fun of? Oh, the students want to make learning fun. And so really keeping into consideration like some of those voices that maybe we don't take as seriously as we should when we're thinking about what we're going to be doing over the next.
Yes, and so as I mentioned, we are meeting with the students. Dr. Lewis is meeting with 2 groups of students tomorrow of about, I think you said 40 students in each group. And so their feedback will be looked at separately from everything else. So we'll look at the student feedback separately, we'll look at the teacher feedback separately, so we also know where the information is coming from, and so that helps us in our prioritization. If it's something all the students said, it won't get lost when we combine it with the overall results, where there may be a lot more people. So,
how were those groups picked?
So we shared with the 2 high schools to select, I wanted 10 from each grade level, and I wanted a very diverse group. So the schools will end up picking those students or pick those students. And what I shared with them, I didn't want all of the Honor Society students. I wanted a diverse group from a social standpoint. I want students that haven't attended school frequently. I want to hear from them. And quite frankly, even, I talk about the Bridge kids. I want some of them on it as well. So a very diverse group of students.
Okay. That's good.
I mean, I'm going to say the comment too, like as we were going around during that meeting, if we can be purposeful about as much as we can, including our Native American, Indian, because oftentimes they look at like presentations or graphs and they're grouped into others, and that's oftentimes, I feel like in this community already they feel that invisibility. So when we can, just be a little more culturally sensitive to or aware of that.
okay, anything else?
The only other thing that I would add is that I hope the community and the board is really seeing that we said that we would do exactly, as I think about how do we continue to earn trust for the stakeholders and the staff, is that one of the things that we said is doing the listening learning tours, that we will take all of this data, even the data we collect from the listening learning tour, but as you can see, we've actually are using data that was here before me in terms of the Patron Insight Survey as well as the Superintendent Search Survey. So we're acknowledging all of the data that was collected to begin to identify the areas that we need to address.
I guess I do have one more question, and I don't know really, it's probably for both of you. As we were doing that session on Monday, there were a lot of ideas that were put up on that board, and I realized that you've kind of culled them down to these things, but where are all of those ideas? Are they gone? Have they been put to the teams that are going to work on each theme? Mm-hmm. What's happened with all those postings?
Right, yeah, so we actually recorded all of those in a spreadsheet and kind of came up with the categories, but once again, as the groups are working on those strategic themes, all of that information will go back. There were a number of things that came up, and this happens all the time, in response to outcomes or strategic themes that were really initiative ideas. Mm-hmm. So we have kept those, and those will get carried over into the next session. Okay. And the other thing I should mention that I did not mention, just because it often comes up, is that as soon as the board reviews this again after we have the input from the community and see whether or not there are any changes, on a parallel path to developing the strategic initiatives, we will also be working on coming up with measurable performance indicators for each of those priority student outcomes and determining the baseline data. And then the board can have a conversation about, at the end of the strategic plan, where you would like to see those outcomes be in terms of measurable performance. So there is a performance measure track in addition to the strategic initiative track. Okay?
Yeah.
Right. Anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, we've got about 15 minutes before we start our meeting, so we can just take a break, get more food, use the restroom, whatever you need to do.
Yay.
See you.
19 regular school board meeting. And the first thing we need to do is approve the agenda.
I move we approve.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then we have some special recognitions today. Southwest Middle School's Future City Regional Champion and National Qualifiers. And I think we have Danny Lawton Barker, to the Gifted Education Facilitator, to discuss that recognition. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for having us today. And sorry if I sound a little bit froggy. I think the weather has caught up with me finally. So thank you for having us, and congratulations to our Southwest Middle School student engineers. We had 4 teams of, I think, 48 students, problem solvers, that worked since August on some really serious real-world challenges. And they traveled with their products to K-State on January 26th to compete in the Great Plains Regional National Engineers Week Future City competition. They showed off their futuristic cities, set 100 or more years in the future, and their solutions for a resilient electrical grid that can stand up to natural disasters through 5 different deliverables: a 1,500-word essay, a virtual city analysis based on lessons from SimCity, a 2-by-4-foot scale model of a portion of their city with moving parts, a project plan, and a 7-minute presentation that highlights all of their innovations and their use of the engineering design process. In all of their preparations, these kids consulted with professional engineers, architects, urban planners, utilities workers, artists, performers, writers, etc. This really is the real deal when you think about integrated curriculum at the middle school level. We got feedback. We made our products better, better, better every step of the way. And in fact, I think I annoyed them because I kept telling them what to fix, as did all of the professionals that we consulted with. In the end, each of our 4 outstanding teams walked away with awards, and we're really proud of them. Our first team was named Ville Rouge, and this is an action shot at K-State. They were a colony on Mars. And so in terms of natural disasters, they were learning how to deal with the constant windstorms that would be happening on the red planet when they were designing their electrical grid. Consisting of Dawson Bonnell, Connor Brown, Lauren Brown, Stephen Dwan, Roman Hasso, Andy Moon, Olivia Nagel, Danny Phelan, John Plakowski, and Cooper Stone. The city did really well. They took the Ad Astra Award for Best City in Space, sponsored by PEC, and that was also accompanied by a $250 tech grant. So congratulations to Ville Rouge. Our other 7th grade team, Dushanbe, reimagined and redesigned Dushanbe, Tajikistan, coming up with a unique drone-based grid to combat frequent earthquakes. This team consisted of Fatima Ahmed, Marcella Allison, Monte Assisian, Yael Gilleth, Ethan Hart, Brendan Heathcote, Julia Kwan, Jacob Lose, Elliot Storm, Braden Walton, and Yejun Yoon. And this team took 2 different awards: the Design Build Award, sponsored by WSP USA, and the Tech Savvy Award, sponsored by the Society of Women Engineers, the Kansas City chapter. So they did a fantastic job. Congratulations. Then we come up to our 8th grade teams. Izambala is the name of this team. And they built in what is now known as Cape Town, but 100 years from now will be known as Izambala. And they really tried to address the problem of water scarcity and flooding that really is hitting Cape Town right now. And so they used things such as amphibious architecture, quantum computing, advanced water catchment systems, etc. This team consisted of Peter Barabin, Caroline Burke, Samir Farhat, Felix Guo, Olive Harrington, Tahima Hashim, Emma Hefty, Jackson Roberts, Nick Stefanov, Stephen Tao, Kylie Voss, Ben Williams, and Keaton Shu. They did a great job, and they took 2 awards, the Model Writing Award, sponsored by ASCE, and Best Communications Award, sponsored by Burns McDonnell. Congratulations. And then our other 8th grade team, Kaguya, formerly Osaka, Japan, addressed earthquakes, tsunamis, and the multiple disasters that Osaka faces today. They used several biophilic engineering concepts and a complex and comprehensive energy system. This team consisted of Abby Coons, Andrew Huang, Naheen Jamal, Casey Kong, Campbell Leach, Will Lucien, Emma Liu, Shruti Malik, Shabayan Malik, Eli Marburger, Miles Rogero, Nathaniel Slemmer, Lauren Tao, and Sawyer Thompson. This team also took 2 awards, the Model Presentation Award, sponsored by the Engineers Foundation of Kansas, and the Great Plains Regional Champion. Congratulations. Between regionals and nationals, we had about 3 weeks to raise a bunch of money to take the entire team and to perfect the little bits of things that we could still perfect. You can't rewrite your essay, you can't redo your SimCity, but you haven't given your presentation yet, right? So what could we do? We gave it more and more and more. We also looked at the board and tried to see what could we do to perfect that as well. So that's what we did for those 3 weeks. While in DC, the 23 kids who went with us on this trip spent their time completing all the competition requirements with brains and finesse and soaking up the town's history, science, culture, etc. If anyone ever travels with me, you'll know we don't rest. We keep moving, and we try to see all the things, even with the crazy weather we experienced. In the end, Kaguya was awarded a special award, which comes with a $300 Amazon gift card from the AARP for the best age-friendly city. Those judges really fell in love with their solution, especially their housing solution. They had some really unique origami-inspired architecture, which was beautiful. We later found out from our regional coordinator that we were 1.1 points out of the top 5, and we placed 6th in the nation. He also noted that we were the highest ranked regular public school in the competition. There are lots of STEM academies and STEM magnets there. So I think he wanted to make me feel better. Because of course, anytime you're doing this, you're gunning for number 1, right? Like, I can't help it. I'm pretty competitive, right? But 6th in the nation, hello, that's awesome, right? I just wanted to note that after finishing finals, and we had a little bit of heartbreak, this is before the heartbreak, because we weren't number 1, but you know what, we were really, let's be honest. But we went straight to the Japanese embassy and spoke with the cultural attaché. We had an appointment with them, and they were so impressed with our kids. I can't tell you how many people in DC over and over told me, like, you've got a great group of kids there. And I always said, I know. I really do. But they presented about Lawrence, about Kansas, about Future City, and about their origami. Actually, the Japanese embassy was planning to do an origami workshop with us, and then when they saw what the kids had created, they were like, maybe, maybe they should be teaching us. But we did do a little bit. This is some of our craziness leading up to that. This is some science learning. This is presenting. You can see a little bit of their board here, presenting at the open house night to people from all over the United States. There are teams there from China as well. There were, I think, 3 different teams from China and some teams from Canada. And here we are at the embassy. They were so thrilled with our kids because they're pretty awesome. So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
There we are. Making a little
Congratulations. Thanks for all your hard work. Good job. Good job. Thank you. Congratulations. You did a great job. Congratulations. Awesome. Great work. Congratulations. Investing so much time with this.
Hope you feel better.
Yes, I did. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do believe we have the families of these amazing scholars with us as well. With our families of these amazing scholars, please stand. I just want to say thank you for entrusting in us your students, and this is just a testament to what we want to get to and what we want to continue to strive to. But first of all, we're showing the nation already that we have the best students in the nation and in the country. But most importantly, this is just another testament of the caliber of students that we have in this district. And so I want to say thank you, parents, for continuing to work with your students. And most importantly, thank you to our staff and leadership over at Southwest.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the president's report. I have a short report. We had 2 meetings last week. The first we've heard about in our work session today, the 80 people that came from the community, from our partners across the community, and teachers, administrative staff. Melissa, I, and Shannon were all there to talk about the strategic planning, and we heard a lot about that today. We basically got that same information, and then we did the exercise where we, kind of put ideas out there about the different questions. And so I'm excited about where that's going, and we'll get more and more input. The community has several more opportunities for giving input in the coming weeks, so please watch out for that. We also held a meeting at LHS last Thursday to discuss school safety. It was very well attended, and again, I want to extend my warmest thanks to all of those who attended and engaged in that very difficult conversation. And I know Dr. Lewis is probably going to talk more about next steps and things like that, but I did want to say thank you to him for providing very strong leadership around this issue, for being available to students and teachers and community members to not only brainstorm ideas, but to really process emotions that we all feel when we talk about these things and about the safety of our kids. So thank you for being a strong leader for us. And then finally, I wanted to welcome Lindsay Rutledge from LHS. She is our student board member today, so thank you for coming, and certainly feel free to speak up if you have any thoughts that you want to share with us as we go through the agenda.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And that takes us to the superintendent of schools report.
All right. First of all, I do want to welcome and congratulate Melissa Blevins and J.C. Ham, who I believe are here in the audience tonight. Please stand and come forward. Pending board approval, these are our 2 new elementary principals beginning our 2019-20 school year. Melissa, which is right there, will lead Sunflower next year after 18 years in public education, most recently at Ross Elementary in Topeka. JC, who's one of our own, has done a great job as assistant director of our virtual education and will become Woodlawn's principal next year after 9 years in public education and 2 years in health as a healthcare specialist in the United States Army. So thank you for your service there. I'm excited to continue to work with JC and definitely welcome Melissa to our leadership team. So if you want to come around and.
Sunflower is my home school, so I'm glad to see you there.
Welcome. Thank you. I know, right?
Welcome. Good to see you as well. All right, I have a few more announcements. I will spend tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon visiting with high school students about our strategic plan. And then in addition to that, all teachers and support staff are invited tomorrow evening to join me in a discussion around our draft student priorities and strategic themes from 4 to 6 p.m. at Billy Mills Middle School. On Thursday, we welcome the community to attend 2 of those sessions, and so in addition to talking with our students and staff, we will have 2 community sessions. One will be on Thursday from 5:30 to 7, again at Billy Mills Middle School. And the second Community Strategic Planning Forum will be held on Monday night at 6:30, from 6:30 to 8 at Connect Church. Again, as Jessica mentioned, I want to thank all of our students, parents, staff, community members, our Lawrence Police Department, our partners over at Burt Nash, and our partners at Be Smart for attending our first community conversation about public safety. And I will tell you, to have over 300 people bring ideas and share their concerns during an evening forum really illustrates that this community is vested in its schools and concerned about its safety, but it also illustrates that it cares and this community wants to be involved in solutions, which is greatly appreciated for the safety concerns of our young people as it relates to weapons in our buildings. We did collect a lot of feedback that we are compiling, and those suggestions will be shared on our safety website at www.usd497.safety. We will also use that feedback as we discuss improving our short-term and long-term security and safety measures and procedures with our community partners. And we have scheduled that second session, which we did say we will have another one at Free State. We want to be proactive over there as well. And we will continue these conversations in every building, really, to be honest with you. That public safety meeting at Free State High School is March the 28th at 6:30. We had over 300 families and students to attend our Jayhawk Blueprint meeting, informational meeting on last week. I think Rick was there, GR was there. And so for those that missed it, it is available online on our YouTube channel. And in addition, there's a website that's blueprint.ku.edu. Again, blueprint.ku.edu. And for those that may not be familiar, this is where our high school juniors and seniors would have an opportunity to take college-level courses, about 11 to 13 courses. And it's unique to Lawrence Public Schools. As mentioned at the meeting, there's a similar program with some school districts in the east there, but that program is only designed for 8 majors. The classes that our students will have the opportunity to take can really apply to any major. So definitely unique to Lawrence Public Schools. I'm excited about this. The district is excited to announce our plans to launch our Learning Forward Future Ready Summer Use. After hearing feedback from students and families and staff, we will provide the opportunity for our middle and high school students to extend their learning. I always say learning doesn't stop when they leave our walls. Learning should be 24/7, and it will be starting this summer. All of our students, secondary students, middle school students, and high school students will have the opportunity to take their devices home over the summer to continue that learning. So our middle schoolers with the iPads and our high schoolers with the MacBooks. So you're senior?
Freshman.
Oh, well, you can take yours home too. But we are requesting that our students and parents bring those permission forms, signed permission forms, and return those by May the 22nd. This information will be shared with our secondary families later this week, but you heard it here first. And we're super excited about that. More information will be shared on our website at usd497.org/future-ready. After our use of severe inclement weather days, we are wanting everybody to let's hope for no more snow days. Do want to remind everyone that our schools will be in session on our designated scheduled makeup day, which is April the 19th. At this time, when we look at our minutes, Samri and Kathy has calculated our minutes. At this time, only our high schools lack the state-required number of instructional hours, and so we are working with our high school administration to come up with a plan for making up the necessary time, most likely by adding minutes to the remaining days of school. And then also due to extraordinary weather, I've had numerous concerns from some of our classified staff about the loss of pay on those days not work. And so I have decided to pay all of our classified staff for last Wednesday's inclement weather day, regardless of whether they worked, and credit any personal leave time to be used that day. Because, we do not plan to make up our February 20th inclement weather day, and so this will not be an addition to our budget. The inclement weather day on February the 20th also forced the cancellation of our ACT testing day at both high schools, and so the state has scheduled a makeup day. for April the 2nd. So this just allows our scholars additional time to study for those tests, which I know they are probably doing right now. And you'll do when you go home. Congratulations also to our high school wrestlers and swimmers for their outstanding performance at the state tournaments. Free State's Madison Gray is the girls' wrestling state champion at 132 pounds. Elijah Jacobs is the boys' wrestling state champion at 140 pounds. And Lawrence High's E.J. Jusom placed second, wrestling at 285 pounds. Free State swimmers Benjamin Vorthman and Riley Moore won state titles in the 100 freestyle and 100 butterfly. The Firebirds 400 freestyle relay placed second, and its 200 medley relay placed third. And then lastly, I do invite our board and community to enjoy some jazz from both of our high schools. Jazz performances by both high school bands, along with coffee, hot chocolate, and homemade desserts during Java and Jazz. That's tomorrow night from 7 to 9 at Lawrence High Band Room. A free will donation is appreciated to support our high school jazz ensembles. Thank you.
Okay. And next up is patron commentary. Do we have any patron commentary tonight? Yes? Okay. Did you fill out a form? Okay. Yep. So I will just read, this is content we read for the patron commentary every time, so don't take it personally. USD 497 Board of Education welcomes patron comments. Thanks you for taking the time to talk with us about our policies and procedures. This is your time to share your opinions. However, complaints about specific staff or students will be heard by the board in executive session in order to protect their privacy of the individuals discussed. While you're not required to share your information, we appreciate if you do so we can follow up with you with any concerns. And you have 5 minutes. Okay.
Right up here, please.
Yes, so Michelle Salmons?
Michelle Salmons.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm a teacher at Free State High School. Okay. I teach art and CTE classes. And yeah, I'm here just to make some comments about the Kansans Can Redesign School project. It's a hot topic in all of our buildings. And especially I'm just speaking on behalf, well, not on behalf of Free State, but just what I know personally at Free State High School. So I mainly just wanted to start about if I were to vote right now, if I wanted to become an Apollo school at Free State for next year, I would probably vote yes, because there's many things that excite me about this initiative from KSDE. So some of the things I could go on, but I have 5 minutes. So one of the things that when I hear about an education that excites me is when schools are kind of start schools within schools or create smaller school communities. I believe it's so essential for us to try to empower our students to engage them in really deep learning. And I've seen from just my experience and others hearing about other schools that when we provide cross-curricular experiences for students, when we can align our curriculum from subject to subject and allow students to and not exactly choose their projects, but have some choice, have student voice over what it is that they're looking. They get to look at their standards. They get to assess themselves on how they're learning their standards and how they can show those standards. That requires co-teaching, which can be such a powerful tool, which we just, time is always the issue that we say we never have the time for. But so when I think about this opportunity to possibly go back and think about the foundation we've built, how we run our school at Free State, there may be those opportunities to restructure things, see how teachers can have more time to meet across disciplines, not just within their departments, to really align their standards, because so many times when I teach something, I'm bringing in history and graphic design and art. I'm bringing in politics. I'm bringing in these things. They're bringing in graphic design and psychology, in psychology classes. So I could go on and on about the opportunities we could do for this. I love the idea of getting our stakeholders at Free State, our parents and our teachers and our community members, and seeing what it is that they need at school. When I talk to kids about, what if you got to have a say in what your school day looked like? Their eyes light up, and that's what I like in my day. I want my kids to light up, and I don't want to just see that glaze over. I'm memorizing things, then I'm showing you this information, and now I'm going to toss it out the window. So these opportunities to do some of these things are amazing, and I look forward to them. However, my biggest concerns is this initiative is a bottom-up initiative. It requires asking teachers and students and parents for their input and taking their input, allowing them to decide things. So my huge question is, are we a district that is willing to look at how we manage teachers and how we manage student learning, maybe put our approach of the top down aside, and trust teachers to be professionals, and move away from kind of this line worker factory approach of education that is a problem within our whole society, not just here in Lawrence. But those are my biggest concerns, is just if we do this work as teachers, if we're powered up and empowered and students are we then 2 years later going to be told, yeah, well, we want you to do things this way now, And I know data will drive things and we'll look at that, but that's all, what the plan is for the whole redesign. Look at your data, see what is your mission, how can you get there? It's all CESA aligned. We've got our 4 R's and everything, but what specifically happens and where's the support going to go? So talking to my colleagues, and we are having conversations almost weekly together. We've got one coming up on Wednesday, and it always comes down to, will we actually be trusted as teachers to make these decisions? And so just mainly wanting to come and voice my opinion and how I feel about these things. And hopefully, I know redesign will continue to be a conversation. We have voting coming up. And hopefully, yeah, I don't really have an endpoint. That's just that was it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I will say that we have heard that concern multiple times, and certainly the LEA president has talked to us and administrators to keep that in all of our minds, that's a really important feature of the redesign. So that is definitely part of the conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, board commentary. Kelly? Okay.
So I went to a couple of committee meetings, and I just wanted to give you guys an update. Shannon and I had a policy committee meeting with Dave, and essentially we're outlining our priorities for the summer right now, so there's not a whole lot to report out yet, just to know that we're working on a few initiatives. And one of the things I'm really excited about, and I've shared with a couple of you, was I think Melissa brought it to us, an idea of an equity policy for the district, so that we're really in the beginning phases of it, just making sure that we understand what you guys took from your conference and the other models that are happening within across the country, but I think it'll align nicely with some of the strategic planning that's happening. So just to let you know that we're looking at that amongst several other policy issues, but I just wanted to bring that one up one more time. And then Melissa and I met with the budget committee, and my primary report is that I did ask that committee have recommendations to us or suggestions for direction, hopefully by the April meeting. They're new, so next year, this timeline, it'll be easier for them to bring recommendations to the board. And right now, we're just kind of getting up to speed and learning a lot and getting a lot of direction from Kathy, who's been, as I mentioned before, amazing. So just wanted to let you know that hopefully we'll have some recommendations or some contributions from them when we're making budgetary decisions. And then I met with the district site council. Do you mind if do you want me to?
Oh,
yeah,
please.
Rick was there. And we had a couple discussions, but the one that I wanted to highlight was related to redesign, and I think teachers kind of stepped out. But it was a robust conversation and looking at, while we are waiting to get to a space where we were ready to do redesign at the state level, the recommendation from, I don't know if it's a firm recommendation, but it seemed to me that the consensus was that as principals and teachers identify issues in their particular individual schools and have initiatives that they would like to move forward that help us along the lines of our strategic planning and is based on their specific data, that we as a district are responsive to redesign in the spirit of redesign at a local level, that even if we're not participating within the framework of the redesign at the state level. Does that make sense? Does that seem accurate to you, the summary? Yeah. Okay. And then I met with the Kennedy Site Council, and it was a really engaged group of parents, and I was happy to learn from them about their school. And there are a couple things that they're working on at Kennedy, but in particular, I wanted to mention that they, in reviewing their school data, noted that in the summer, their kids fall behind because of the gap between when they've seen their teachers and then when they see them again. And I know that that's a really challenging issue for districts to get around across the country, but particularly important as Kennedy is one of our schools that has lower income students and has had some targeted work that we're doing to improve outcomes there. So it was great to be there. It's a beautiful building, so if you haven't been inside of it, it's so lovely. And they asked, and I thought this was really important, and I wanted to mention this, that we start talking about the good things about Kennedy and the spirit of Kennedy and the spirit of the families and how committed they are to their kids, which was evident. And I wanted to mention that as well. So anyway, that's some of the board stuff that I have been doing. I know you all have been doing lots of things in the community as well, but really excited to join the Kennedy Site Council.
Great. Anyone else?
I had the opportunity, Kelly, I spent actually 30 minutes at the budget meeting last week due to EAC and Delta, and I think the biggest conversation after Dr. Lewis came and spoke was what are the next steps, some of the things that Delta felt was trying to really solidify what they're doing, and although some things, some goals that EAC and Delta have kind of cross-connect, but really being able to look at it from a parent, parents of color, parents of students of color lens, and have that safe space to kind of talk amongst each other and then come back and meet. So I think a lot of the conversations that we had it was a great conversation, and just like, where do we go? I know initially they wanted to join together to, as Dr. Lewis was coming, as a superintendent, to try not to, stretch his time too much. But now I think they're considering like trying to, still collaborate together, but maybe the same days, but at different points, and then come back and debrief each other to see how each committee could help. And there were a lot of individuals that were really interested in hearing what the staff, Danica Moore, was saying, and wanted to kind of see if she can kind of help in reorganizing that. So that was the big takeaway from there that we got from that meeting. And I just, again, want to echo the community conversations about safety at LHS. I really enjoyed it. We had a cheat sheet. We had a great resource. We had a student there, and just really hearing from the students. That's what's important. And we had some great ideas and some things that maybe were vocalized by adults, and the student was very great at advocating and speaking up and saying, no, as a student, I will not feel safe if we did X, Y, Z, So it was just a great conversation had, and it was definitely, I walked away like, I don't know, I felt good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I forgot one thing.
That's okay, so did I. So
yeah. We attended the board lunch at Southwest Middle School, Shannon and I did, and I just want to, we got to see the Avid kids, and one of the things we got to observe related to the work we're doing on student safety, was it called Silent Conversations? Oh, yeah. Yes? okay, see, that it was amazing. And all of us that attended were like, oh my gosh. So I am a person that talks sometimes too much. This forced me to be quiet and listen. So the students actually took, as part of their, this is a strategy used within AVID, but I thought really effective for a lot of difficult conversations. The students took content related to gun safety in schools and gun violence in schools, and then they wrote out, highlighted from an article, points that they wanted to make, but you had to read what they wanted to share with you as they wrote it. And it was very powerful. I think it was one of the most powerful things I've seen since I've been on the board. And to just really get to, did you not, it was, right? Yeah, it was really great. So I just wanted to highlight that and say that, I mean, kudos to Southwest Middle School and to that particular assignment. It was just so powerful. It was really effective. And it was good for me to be able to see what students thought about things like metal detectors and what makes them feel safe and how they develop relationships with adults. It was just great. So,
Great. Okay, well, the one thing I forgot was that also this weekend, because you kind of talked about wrestling and swimming, our state choir was this weekend in Wichita. And so from our 2 high schools, we had about 40 kids, to about roughly 20 from each school that went and participated in the state choir. It also did band and orchestra. I know less about how many kids were involved in that because my kid doesn't do that. But they were definitely there from Lawrence. So we were representing all over the state this weekend, it sounds like. Yeah, I know Jill's son was wrestling, so there's a lot of driving on the highway happening here. Yeah, go ahead.
One more thing, Kelly made me think of it, and they may have talked about this at the Kennedy Site Council, but I know the board is aware of our Kansas Reading Roadmap, and Kennedy as a school, Schwegler in Pinckney, where there's not only support for the summer, to kind of come back that summer learning loss, but also after school as well. And so I'm excited about those resources there at Kennedy.
and they were there. I
those
got
other
to meet
schools.
them, and Melissa and I met at a different community meeting. We met with one of the coordinators. It's really exciting. I'm glad they're here, and I know it's a grant, and I hope it gets extended for many, many years.
And then Melissa made me remember one. We took staff of color to Kansas City on Friday evening, and then again on Saturday for a full day workshop. We took the bus up there, so Lawrence Public Schools was represented very well. We got a chance to mingle and meet with some staff of color from all around the Kansas City area, Kansas City, Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri, and had presenters from all across the nation. I think the highlight was Chris Emden, who's an author who did a phenomenal job with the presentation, and he brought Derek Luke with him, who I call him Antoine Fisher. But Ms. Rao was there as well. But it just was a phenomenal opportunity for, I would say, for our staff of color to kind of get recharged to continue this work. And so I was excited to ride the bus. We had a good time, even though Annette Cannoli was trying to get us to take a road trip to St. Louis. But yeah, we had a good time.
Good, great. Okay, so now we need to move on to approval of consent. And before we do that, we have a retirement, and then I also need to read a statement. So I want to bring to your attention the personnel enclosure was updated at 4:15 today to add the superintendent's recommendations for Woodlawn and Sunflower principal hires who we met. And we don't need to amend or anything with the personnel enclosure, but I did want to make sure you were aware of the change. And we do have a retirement, and then if you want to go ahead and make the motion after that.
Okay. It's a sentence, right? The board would like to express our sincere appreciation to Carla Westheffer for 20 years of service at LHS as a para-interrelated resource teacher. So we thank you for your service, and we hope you, we wish you well on your future endeavors. Oh, I move the Board of Education adopt the items listed on the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Gordon Ross,
Yes.
Ingram,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Beeson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Fincher.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Oh, 6-0.
Sarah.
Have it.
I'm sure Shannon would have said yes, but she isn't here after all. Okay, so we move on to our HR report with Sammy Devon and Dave Cunningham.
Well, Dr. Lewis, I hope you did some recruiting for us over the weekend.
Oh, I actually did. I
Awesome.
have one coming tomorrow to tour one of our schools in, Kennedy's principal. Name just went-
Shalita Middleton?
Yeah, we were tag teaming with a couple of,
Awesome.
yeah, we were almost harassing them, but.
Great. Thank you.
That
We
too.
appreciate that. Well, yeah, and I'm Samry Devon, the Director of Human Resources, and alongside with me tonight is David Cunningham, our Executive Director of HR and Legal Services. And first of all, we'd like to start by thanking all of you for allowing us time on your agenda tonight and to update you a report on the demographics of our data for our state and our students, and also share with you, I'm super excited to share with you our recruitment and retention efforts also. So, and I would like, she left. Laura Robertson was here, and she was just here, and I was going to introduce her. She's part of our HR staff, too, that made a lot of this happen. So anyway, let's look at our slides here. Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, we'd like to start by sharing our race and ethnicity data with our classified staff. Our first slide here shows that currently 80.21% of our classified staff is white, while 19.79% is of color. And this group, this classified group, includes all of our food service, our paraeducators, our custodians, maintenance and ground crew, and clerical, just to highlight a few of the employee groups from our classified staff. And I think, as all of you know, our classified staff is such an integral part of our school environment, and every day many of the folks here just start creating such long-lasting relationships with all of our students. So we appreciate them very much and value them. Our classified staff certified staff race and ethnicity report. White teachers still make up the vast majority of American educators nationwide, and this is also true with our certified staff. We currently have 91.49% of our certified staff white and 8.51% of color. Then we go to our administrative staff, and as you can see on this slide that we have 85.2% white and 14.8% of color. So this slide here shows total staff, total student staff population, and so it includes all of the numbers from the previous three slides, our certified, our classified, and our administrators, but it also includes our this slide also includes our Rule 10 coaches, our AVID staff, our AVID tutors, and our farm to school, and et cetera. So some of those groups that when we capture this data in our system, they have a different code. So they're not the classified or certified. So that's why we wanted to make sure that you understood this certified, classified administrators, and then included in this are Rule 10 coaches, AVID tutors, and farm to school. And we really, truly continue to work on hiring a more diverse staff because having teachers of color is essential, and we know this. We know that the studies have tied same-race teachers to better academic achievement. So our recruitment and retention. So here we go. Unfortunately, the growth in teacher license is flat in the state of Kansas. Am I echoing? I'm sorry. Sorry. It's been flat for the state of Kansas, and we have seen a gradual decline over the last couple of years. And I read a report that this came from Dr. Watson's task force report on teacher vacancies and supply. And this was in 2016, this report came out. And his task force listed the reasons behind this, they felt was lower wages compared to other professions, just that continued battle over school funding, and low esteem for the profession.
So, Sammy, can I ask you a question? How does that compare to just states across the nation? I mean, are there any states where this is going in the opposite direction, or is this kind of just general?
You know, last year I did include a slide that showed the same across the nation. So, yeah, unfortunately, yes. Well, if you look at this slide, and Kansas teacher shortage is also growing worse. If you look at this, KSDE showed in 2018 there were 612 teaching positions that remain unfilled by a qualified teacher across the state of Kansas. And last year there were 512. So it's kind of rise since that. But we're fortunate with our location in Kansas because we aren't facing the challenges that they have out in western Kansas or in our metro areas in the state. So they continue to have and show the biggest issues with vacancies. We started the school year with 5 unfilled certified vacancies, and happy to announce, here's some good news, that we are currently in the process of filling those 4 vacancies right now of the 5 that we have this year. And that was applaud our teacher recruitment fair. They came from that teacher recruitment fair we had a couple of weeks ago. So very excited about that. Okay. The next slide, threw this in here for you to see. This is just for your information. This is our next slide, shows our total number of new hires. We tend to hire a little over 100 teachers per year. To me, this is the most exciting time in HR as we begin to, this is when we start to begin to build the positive relationships with our staff, especially during onboarding and induction week. I really feel like the past couple of years, our induction week is a lot stronger than we've had, keeps getting better and better. And that is a true collaboration between all the departments up here at ESDC is that induction week and what that looks like. So very impressed with that. We work really closely with teaching and learning with that. The next slide, so where are all these teachers coming from? So our next slide, this was kind of interesting. Our next slide shows the top undergraduate colleges. And the pie illustrates where the majority of our teachers receive their teaching degrees. And these are their undergraduate colleges and for the past 3 years. So on the right-hand side there, it lists the universities from the most to the least. And not surprisingly, KU is up there for the top, where we have hired the majority of our licensed staff. But please note, on the left-hand side, 73 colleges were represented over the last 3 years, though. They just had 2 or 1 that we hired from. So I don't want you to think we just, it's just not here in the state of Kansas. We had 73 colleges across the United States. Okay, so this is where we go. So we go to these places every year to, or traditionally to recruit. And as you can see, these are our typical recruiting sites. And I also have another really good piece of information. We just got a call from KU last week. We typically send two recruiters to their spring recruitment fair, but we had more teachers to sign up, so we're actually sending 4 now. So we're excited about that. So that's some good news. We will also be attending PERC again this year. PERC is the Pittsburgh Educators Recruitment Consortium. We shared this information with you last year. They have, this is a huge recruitment fair in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with over 1,000 teaching candidates and from 30 colleges and universities in Western Pennsylvania. So, and it has a strong number of diverse candidates too. We learned about this, Dr. Stubblefield and I, at a AAEE, a conference that we attend, and Liberal. So Liberal was there, and they were like, "Oh, you need to go to PERC because we recruit a lot from this place." So this year, Dr. Stubblefield, Dr. Jones, and Mr. Fry. He's a fine arts teacher at the high school. He's actually from that area. He's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So that's another strategy that we're looking at is we're seeing where are our teachers coming from. So we need to have them be recruiters for their alma maters. So we're bringing Mr. Fry with us so he can make connections with the candidates there. And a new site that Dr. Lewis wanted us to visit was the University of Central Missouri. So I'll be going there over spring break, and we'll see what becomes of that. Excited about that. Okay. Oh, yeah. So this is our recruitment fair. And I know Dr. Louis shared some of the information with you at the last board member meeting, but so a couple of Saturdays ago we had this event and we had over 70 really strong candidates. Where last year, our last recruitment fair, we had just a little close to 50, and we did it at a different time. The feedback that we received from the last recruitment fair was it was really hard for our candidates to get there right after school. So we did this on a Saturday, and it was a Saturday from 9 to noon. I think it's timely because we tend to hire your stronger and teachers with experience in the months of February and March. So that's what we're looking for right now is we're trying to hire earlier, that's our goal, and to hire in February and March. The candidates, this was a really neat event. They had, while they were waiting on their interviews, they actually had conversations with first and second year teachers in our district and our learning coaches. And I really think our candidates took away that they felt welcomed and they felt valued, especially because we were kind of running out of tables. And what recruitment fair do you go to where you have your superintendent, your deputy superintendent, and your director of elementary and director of high school all interviewing teaching candidates? That's pretty awesome. You don't see that very often, and we got a lot of positive feedback. I wish you could have seen the expression of this teacher. She was a first-year teacher, and we were like, oh, so we were setting up tables, and I said, you get to interview with the superintendent, and her face was like, so she was a little nervous. But we got a lot of positive feedback on this. Our building administrators really found it very productive, too. So we sent a survey out to all of the candidates, and they're going to provide us with feedback so we can even get better next year.
Samara, did any of the participants that showed up for the recruitment fair sharing experiences that they've had with some schools out east?
Yes, so they did. So we had competition that day. We had Blue Valley, I shouldn't say the name, should I? Have school district. School district had their recruitment fair.
He set you up, so it's fine.
Say that. They actually had their recruitment fair on the same day. So we had a couple of younger staff come running in there, and they were like, "Oh, we just came from Blue Valley," and they said, "We've never felt so warm and welcomed." And it just felt so good here, they said. We had people already greeting us. This room here was a hospitality room. We had SNS Coffee, actually donated coffee for the event. And so it was just awesome. So their experience here was much better. And another school district close to that one also said the same thing, but I'm not going to name that one. Okay, so this slide shows the exit trend data for the past 3 years. All certified staff must select a reason from these state codes. So these are state codes. These aren't codes that we make up. This is good news here because the top reason for the exits were early retirement and retirement. I combined those two together with 30%. But what I really liked to see here was that we were really pleased to see that leaving the profession was one of the lowest exit reasons. So that was really good to see. Okay. So last year at this time, we talked to you about the apprenticeship license program with the Para Pathway Pilot Program. And we had 20-some teachers apply for this, paras in our district. Paras. So we had 20-some paras apply for this, and we had some criteria that we set. So we had them have interview with us and the special ed team directors. They had to have 3 recommendation letters, one from their principal. And there's also other state requirements that they had to meet too. But we had 6, and we have 6 right now that were paras last year that are now special education teachers and working on their degree, and they're doing a fabulous job. One para actually cried when I called and said that they were admitted to this program. So it was really neat. So anyway, we sent out the applications earlier this week, and we'll be accepting them for next school year. We have our information night, February 27th, coming up real soon this week. And you got to remember, this is a pilot program with the State Department, so we will hear in April if they approve it for another year. But we wanted to get ahead of the game. So,
how many will it just be another 6, or?
We don't know because, we don't.
It's not really up to us?
No, it's up to us.
Okay.
We want quality, you know what I mean? And so that's very important. So we don't know. I mean, we went into this thinking we would have 5, 3 to 5, and we had 6 really, really good, strong folks paras that have been working in our schools for many, many years. So, and been watching exemplary teaching as they're doing this, so it's awesome. So,
Good.
Ran off my whole script there. So, okay. Oh, Talent Ed. So Talent Ed was a program that you approved purchase of in December. And I just wanted to, just some highlights of this. First of all, we went live in January, which we went live about a week earlier. We were going to possibly go live February 1st. That was our target date. But we had a soft opening in January. And it has made the hiring process so much smoother, even for the applicant and for my HR staff. So they are just like, oh, we're not fielding as many calls as we were. So I just also think it's how great for our applicants to have an easy application to work with and to apply for. We've had over 200 applications since the launch date. Applicants, too, can also apply on their mobile device, which is huge. We will receive, there's a piece, I'll get back to the analytics, but there's this piece called the scheduler in there, and this is amazing because it allows our principals to set up interviews and to communicate directly with the applicants. So, and they can schedule times, and we're actually going to use the scheduler next year for our recruitment fair because there's a recruitment fair tab to use in the scheduler, so that's awesome. And applicants can apply easily for multiple positions. And the analytics piece is really neat. So with the analytics piece, we're every day we have the ability to receive daily analytics through Talent Ed, which is going to give us stronger overall picture of our applicant status. And with this, we can better plan for future hiring strategies. So not only the number of applications, we can also glean our demographics from our, this will allow us to begin gathering some trend data to help us make clear data-driven decisions, hiring decisions too. So
one thing to remember on this type of data is voluntary. The applicant has the option of including it or not, and only the HR staff will see this. This does not go to the hiring manager.
Absolutely not.
So it stays just at a high level so that we can track, is our recruiting paying off in the context of even getting the applicants that we want. So this is not a function that we had available to us in the system that was part of our B+ system. So we're excited to have this data, and hopefully people will be comfortable sharing that information with us, knowing that it's not going to the hiring managers.
So, sorry. I know that, traditionally we look at, graduating students that are going to graduate within the year. Have we looked at juniors? Is there data around, like, if you reach out to juniors, how likely they are to
go into education?
Come back?
Oh.
Like, there are currently juniors in the education program. Like, is there any research that kind of says, hey, even if you reach out to them at that junior level?
Yeah, and Dr. Lewis, do you...
College, sorry.
College. And Dr. Lewis talked to me about that the other day. I mean, he talked about how the students that we have that are going into education, we need to kind of keep track of when they're in their college career. Oh, and that was a hiring strategy that I know you shared with me the other day.
That was part of, in addition to the grow your own, once they get into college, pairing them with a mentor that will kind of follow them through.
But I think it does beg the question, like, when you're recruiting at KU, for example, are you just looking out to the sort of graduating class, or are you?
No, we typically sometimes we'll have juniors come by the table to kind of do some practice interviewing and things.
Kind of open for them to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes the universities will limit whether it's seniors or juniors or seniors, or it's open to all.
Okay.
They drive that whole scheduling part in terms of who's going to be there. We'll talk to anybody that stops and visit with us.
And we actually go out there. I've been invited to different places to do mock interviews and things for college kids, too.
Can I circle back to the PERC?
PERC?
Yeah, because I just have a question. So we did it, last year was the first year we did it. What was our
Well, we had two candidates of color that actually came here to visit. And unfortunately, they did not stay with us, but we did have them actually come and to our community, though, so we could show off our community and our schools.
Okay.
Did they
So as
express
you
why?
go to things like that, you're going to go to PERC and you're going to go to Central Missouri State and those types of things. Like, are you assessing whether or not it's working and valuable?
Sure,
Right.
yes. Yes,
To
we're
the
gathering data on that. And two, I mean, I think pieces of this piece here, because if you go back even to this, I mean, we had a spike in this around our recruitment fair time. So we can look at that. Okay, I just came back from PERC. How many applications did rise during that? So that might be a way that we can use some of that demographic information.
Yeah, but I think what Jessica's mentioning, and you kind of hit on it, is just as we displayed those colleges up there, which colleges during our recruitment efforts are we getting the most candidates from? Which colleges are we getting the most candidates of color from? You know, so that really kind of becomes our
Sure.
breeding ground in terms
Yes,
of recruiting
absolutely.
those future candidates.
And we need to dig down into that data and see that.
That would be interesting
Okay.
information, I think, to have
Absolutely.
next year when you give this report.
Sure, absolutely. So here are HR goals that that our team would like to work on this year. Exit survey. We really need to look back at our exit survey. Currently, we don't have it's specific to the different employee groups that we have, and we just really want to reevaluate that and make sure we're getting the information that we want, the vital information. And then we want to use that exit survey as a learning tool. More of a learning tool than we do now. And also because the teachers and the employees that are leaving us, they're in a great position to give us the constructive feedback that we can use. So definitely want to work on that, and I can report this all back to you guys next year too. Stay interviews. This is something that Dr. Stubblefield encouraged me to do, is with staff of color and with our first and second year teachers. Retention is more impactful than recruitment. So have staff identify the factors that make them want to stay. So I'd go out and do face-to-face interviews, identify strategies that might increase their commitment to our district, and any triggers that cause the employees to possibly look for other employment. So paraeducators, this has been interesting. Paraeducators with recruitment and retention, the district staff and I have met several times over the past couple of months with a group of paras this year, and they have identified 3 areas: communication, staff development, and respect. And so with those, so we've had a lot of productive conversations around those 3 areas, and we've already started problem solving together to make the role of the paraeducator better in LPS. So it's been a really good conversation. I mean, not only did they come with concerns, they came with solutions. They came, so it was a really good dialogue. So that was good. HR support, I'd like to show more support for the College and Career Center is beginning, Patrick Kelly is beginning a teacher cadet program to grow your own educator. So that would involve our juniors and our seniors. So I'm excited about that. It hasn't been launched yet. It's still just in the planning stages. I know he has sent out information to parents, but that is something that I really want to help him with and be more involved in. And I'd like to continue my partnership, of course, with Haskell Indian Nations University with the implementation. I've kind of worked with them with the implementation of their Council of Accreditation Educator Preparation Standards this year, and I serve on the Students of Education Advisory Board with them. I really enjoy working with Dr. Chuckluck, so she's awesome. And then I'd like to develop a human resource team. And with this team, I mean, just the educator that was just up here, forgot, what is her name?
Melissa.
What was her name? Monica. Michelle. I mean, look how much passion she had for the profession. I need to take that. I need to get in a room made up of passionate, energetic educators so we can start having some creative and innovative strategic plans to recruit and to recruit the best and the most diverse staff possible for Lawrence Public Schools. So those are our HR goals. I would like to end. Rachel in communication has put together a recruitment video. It highlights more of our ESL paras, but this is to recruiting past students. And so she's going to help with some other videos too, but I wanted to share this one with you tonight.
So, first of all, we have a need, right? We have a desperate need for paras. I also really feel like we should be growing our own staff, our own paras, and our own teachers, frankly. Another piece of it is we need more bilingual staff, and we need more diversity in our staff. And so these ladies help with that. Erica's been here for a while, so she's worked a lot with our Native American Club, and these scouts are just getting started, but it's wonderful to have additional Spanish-speaking staff, and especially a licensed interpreter in our building. And then Anna Karen was an AVID student when she was in high school. Oh, yeah. And so it's really helpful because we've been working really hard to get our English language learners into AVID. And so, you know, it's really nice to have her there.
I was excited because I wanted to be a good influence, like Arlen Kilmer, and like I had a lot of, throughout my whole school, I had a lot of supporting teachers and stuff, and I wanted to give it back, but I didn't really want to teach, and I didn't think of anything else that I could do. And then when Arlen Kim were like, why don't you be a para? I was excited because they gave me an opportunity to work in the school, work with kids.
Thanks from Dr. Kreikler and Ala Jones. I actually went to college because throughout high school, I was not, I was like, I can't go to college, I'm not from here, so I'm not worried about it. Mm-hmm. So Miss Jones was like, no, you're going to college.
The pairs are so important because of that small group relationship and the more one-on-one that they bring to the educational setting.
When I had a para, I knew that I could go to them, and specifically if I couldn't go to a teacher, I knew I could go to them because they were in that class with me. They knew what was going on.
It's nice to be extra support for the student, let alone for the teachers.
There's one girl that she prefers for me to explain things to her in Spanish, what the teacher's saying, than in English, and I'll do that for her. So it feels good because I know that she feels more comfortable that way, and I know that she'll understand that way better.
Now that I'm a para, I have that connection with them. I know if I'm there for them and that they know that I'm here for them, they're gonna have that trust to come to me, to help them. I like to help them because that's what was done for me. I want to give that back.
And where to apply afterwards. Questions? And this is our HR team that makes it happen.
Any questions? You've answered them throughout, so thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you. It was great.
Very much.
Just want to, again, thank Samri and Dave for this report, and to all UST 497 staff. We're all recruiters, when it comes to recruiting staff, and our teachers are indeed recruiters when it comes to grow your own. And I've been a teacher once, and I think most teachers have been guilty when students say they want to go into education. We say, no, you don't want to go into education. There's no money. But I think we can reframe that and ensure that our students want to, if they have an interest in going into education, we should, nurture that, because it's a powerful thing when you see, and we have some teachers that are Lawrence graduates, that spent their entire Lawrence education, K-12, here in Lawrence, and are some amazing teachers. But when I can see someone in the front of the class that sat in my seat, that makes, any dream, reachable, for me. And so I'm really adamant about this teacher cadet program and our Grow Your Own. And I think with our Jayhawk Blueprint, that will help, with some of our students in our Grow Your Own. And then once they walk across that stage, they have their high school diploma, they have possibly 1 year of college, and they have a letter of intent to hire that they'll come back here, and we'll mentor them throughout college and keep our hands on them and nurture them and support them. And when they come back, they're indeed Lawrence educators. And so I just want to say to all staff, we're all recruiters, and so let's let's all go out and continue to spread the good word of USD 497.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we need to go into an executive session. And we had talked about it being 30 minutes long, so does anybody want to make this recommendation, this motion?
I will, I can read it.
Okay.
I move the Board of Education recess to executive session to protect the public interest in negotiating a fair and equitable contract and discuss negotiations pursuant to the exception for employer-employee negotiations under AOMA with Dr. Anthony Lewis, Anna Stubblefield, Jerry Kimball, David Cunningham, Kathy Johnson, and Samory Devon invited to be present. And with the board to return to open session in this room at
7:40.
7:40 with possible action to follow. Thank you.
Second.
So I just need to say, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Whatever.
He just never showed up. Just kept going. He went out there and just kept walking.
We are back from executive session, and we do not have any action to follow, so we are really ready for the motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? All right. So.